It is my total honor and privilege to welcome our honored guest here today, and the person you've been waiting all of this time to see. Ladies and gentlemen, President Bill Clinton.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you. First of all, I want to thank Diane for that remarkable and beautifully personal introduction. I was amazed to hear her tell you all she voted for me almost 50 years ago. And she had the good grace to tell you I didn't win the election. But just hold that thought, because I lost that election on principle. We had a difference of opinion on an issue, and my fellow students disagreed with me. That's the way elections ought to work. Well, I had an honorable campaign against a man I admired, and we were fighting over whether Georgetown, where we were students, which was a Jesuit school, at the time, you had to be in the second semester of your junior year before you got a single elective. For your first 2 years, you had to take 6 courses every semester. It was like being in a boot camp that never ended. And you know, I grew up in Arkansas. I'd never been in anything like this, and I thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I mean, after all, I hired on to get an education, and I wanted to learn how to think, not just what to memorize. And so I didn't want to change it. Everybody else said we were old and stodgy and out of step. And my classmates disagreed with me. And they did what they had an absolute right to do. That's the way elections ought to run. Are you for or against this? Are you for or against that? Who can do this? Who can do that? So that's what I want to talk to you about. I want to thank Mayor Henderson from Fort Myers for welcoming me here, and Councilmember Jessica Cosden from Cape Coral, thank you. Ms. Jerry Ware, the president of the Fort Myers Black Caucus, thank you. I was back there getting all my marching orders from her about what I needed to do, including try to send the real candidate here. I want to thank Joseph Tedros, the chair of the Lee County Democratic Party, thank you. Councilwoman Teresa Brown of Fort Myers, Councilmember Johnny Streets. I want to thank our young organizer, Kathleen Leon, who talked, and thank you. Thank you, Pastor Ricky Anderson, for the invocation. Thank you, Billy Thomas, for leading our Pledge of Allegiance, and even more for serving our country with such distinction. And I want to thank at least 2 candidates who are here. April Freeman, a candidate for Congress, and John Scott, a candidate for State Senate. Thank you for being here. And I want a special thanks to the Cypress Hill High School students who sang the national anthem, all of them. Thank you, Bridget and Callie and Mark and Philip and their teacher, Gary Straw. Now, yesterday, a federal court in Tallahassee gave us another day, so we've got until tomorrow at 5 o'clock to register voters. And I want to personally ask you, every single one of you, to try to drag at least one more person to get registered. And there are people here who will help you do it and tell you how to do it. Early voting begins in Lee County on October the 24th, and it ends on November 5th. The more early votes we get, the better. You all remember what it was like in 2012 when there was an attempt to restrict all this and how long the lines were. And Hillary and I, one of our best friends, retired down here 4 years ago, and he said that he waited in the advance voting line for 4 hours. So yeah, you can also vote by mail, that's true. But I think it's important to realize that the mechanics matter, and I'd like to explain why now. I'm going to try to do something that I had hoped would happen at the last debate when it was supposed to be about the people. And I don't know if you noticed, but it was 29 minutes into the debate before one of those people was called on. This election is about you, and I urge you to take it back. It's about you and your tomorrows and your children's tomorrows, and for those of us of a certain age, your grandchildren's tomorrows. Yesterday, I wanted to get my head on straight before I joined the campaign again yesterday afternoon. I drove down to New York to see my 2-year-old granddaughter. And we read a book together. And all of a sudden, I felt like I'd been washed by spring rain. It reminded me of what elections are about and why politics is important. So let's just talk about this. I've only got one job in this election. It's simple: to tell people why, based on my personal knowledge and experience, Hillary would be the best president. And I've known her quite a while. Today is our 41st anniversary. And we've known each other for 45 years, so I got a grip on this subject here. I know it's been a bizarre election. That's the most anodyne word I can think of to describe it. But look, there's a reason for the anger, the frustration that so many people feel all around the world, right? That financial crash 8 years ago had a very long tail. And then there have been all these cultural changes that the ones in America I sort of like, but a lot of people are having trouble with it. I think it's a good thing that we have more racial, religious diversity. I think it's a good thing that the LGBT community has finally gotten equal rights under the law. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that we have the youngest, most diverse workforce of any big country in the world. I think it's our meal ticket to the future. But there are a lot of people who feel that they've been left out and left behind in this economy, and they think nobody cares about them. And I can tell you, when I was born in Arkansas at the end of World War II, we had the second poorest state in the country. But nobody thought they were poor if they had food to eat, could bring a neighbor to lunch, clean clothes on their back, and they thought they could make tomorrow better than today. If you take away that last thing, then you feel not valued. You feel like you don't matter. And it's having no upward mobility hurts worse than going through temporary economic adversity. I was just reliving my life the other day. I don't do that much. I spend most of my time thinking about the future, but I just made a list of everything I'd ever done to earn money, and I don't know, there's more than 24 things. And for a while there, it looked like I couldn't hold a job. Or I had 3 or 4 at once. But I never doubted I could make tomorrow better than today. The other day I was in the upper Midwest, and an African-American bishop came up to me. And he said, "We met before, but I don't think I ever told you that my grandfather was Luther Black of Hope, Arkansas, where I was born." And he said he was a hardworking man, and he lived about 2 blocks from your grandfather's grocery store. And he adored your grandfather because he knew how hard my grandfather was working. And if he had to have food and he hadn't been paid yet and didn't have any money, my grandfather just said, go on, Luther, take what you need. Come in and pay when you can. Now, I know that was a bygone era. I know that sounds naive, but look, there was no food stamps. There was nothing. People were just working as hard as they could to keep body and soul together. And he said, weren't many white people that do that back then to our people. And that's why our family has always supported your family. I can take no credit for that. My grandfather was a good guy. He figured everybody was working hard, obeying the law, trying to do the right thing by their families and their communities, that we were all in this together. That is the fundamental question in this election. I just realized when I celebrated a couple months ago my 70th birthday that I had now spent half of my life, 12 years as a governor, 8 years as president, and 15 years running my foundation in America and around the world, half of my life trying to help people get a job, start a business, get a raise, educate their kids, provide health care for their family, have a place to live, and enable us all to rise together. And I've learned a few things that make Hillary's Stronger Together the right slogan for America and the right mindset for us. Number one, when people are angry, upset, and worried, and they feel belittled or unseen, or when there's been abuse, whether you're in the Black Lives Matter movement because you're worried about what's going to happen to your kids every time they go out the door, or you're a coal miner who believes you'll never get a good job again as long as you live, and you're worried what's going to happen to your kids, you're very vulnerable to have people rub salt in your wounds. Because the easiest thing is to buy somebody who wants to divide you from other people because you already feel divided, who wants to distract you because it's hard to concentrate when you keep hitting a brick wall every day, and who therefore wants to demonize your opponent because, after all, what's anybody done for you lately, right? Or you can cooperate, concentrate, and create a new future. You can win an election with either approach, but once you're in, the only thing that works is cooperate, concentrate, and create a new future. And I've worked all over the world, and I can tell you, wherever, and I worked in places where people still live on less than $1 a day, a lot of them, where we have doubled, tripled, quadrupled, sometimes quintupled farmers' incomes who are women farming an acre of land with a handheld hoe. And wherever people are working together to do good things happen. Wherever they spend all their time fighting, good things don't happen. This is not rocket science. So what I want to say is this. This is what I believe. I believe America has a lot of very serious challenges. One, there is too much inequality. Incomes are too low. The system still favors too much money over capital work. That is, there are too many corporations where the finance tail wags the economic dog. And the classic example of that we've been treated to this year is the movement of the Carrier Corporation in Indiana, which still has 20% of its workers in manufacturing, by the way, Indiana. They moved 2,100 jobs to Mexico, not because they were losing money. They make furnaces in Indiana. That division made $2.9 billion last year. And for every new item they sold, their profit margins were going up. They were going to save $65 million, which is a lot less than $2.9 billion, right? And the union offered to save them the money by reorganizing the work schedules. The company wouldn't even meet with them. They just threw those people under the bus. Now, why did they do that? They did it because they wanted to break the union so they could take a bigger and bigger and bigger percentage of the profits and give it to the wealthiest shareholders who demand to get their money in a year and a day because that's the time it takes to get a lower capital gains tax of 23.9%, which is less than what some of you pay in income tax. Now, that's a problem. And don't we also need... Whoa. No, don't be like them. Give him a hand. They've had a bad week. They've had a bad week. They've had a bad week. And look, at least somebody bought the guy a Hillary t-shirt so he could come under false pretenses. Give him a hand. So anyway, you know, this is a big Republican county. That's not too many, actually. A lot of... So we have these economic problems. We have social divisions. We all know it. We have security issues. We all know that. But I'm just telling you, we're the best positioned big country in the world. First of all, you mark my words, 10 years from now, economic historians will give Barack Obama much more credit than he gets today for the management of this economy. Why do I say that? Why do I say that? When I had the honor to serve, we did. We ran 3 surplus budgets. I left a big surplus for my successor, and we created 22.7 million new jobs. But we also had the information technology revolution, and we put it in every part of America, in every section of the American economy. And it was right after the Cold War, and we just kept pulling people together. When President Obama took office, he had to eat that crash, and we lost jobs for 2 years that he didn't have anything to do with. In spite of that, if you look at the last 36 years, ever since the other side's been hawking this trickle-down economics, and they don't like government jobs, you know, so just add the private sector jobs. We've had the White House almost 16 years, and they had it for 20. So what's the private sector job score? For us, 31.9 million jobs. And if you took away the jobs the president lost that weren't his fault, we'd be at 35. Or 36. But we'll say 31.9. For them, 15.8, less than half. So this is not rocket science. We know what we need to do. If you want more jobs, higher incomes, you got to create the jobs, empower small business people, educate, train, and prepare people to do those jobs, and reward the companies that help you do it, and not the companies that let the economic tail, the finance tail wag the economic dog. It's not rocket science. So what does that mean? Well, interest rates are lower than inflation. That means if the United States sells bonds and you buy them, or somebody from another country buys them, we're getting the money for free over the long run because interest rates are lower than inflation. This may not happen in a long time. We can, in other words, for virtually free money, put millions and millions of people to work modernizing our roads, our bridges, our ports, and our airports, and our seaports. But infrastructure is way more than that now. We're in Florida today. Hillary and Al Gore are in South Florida, where people can see the ocean rising. Now, her opponent may believe that it's a Chinese hoax. All I know is insurance companies will not insure cities or developments within those cities unless aggressive efforts are being made to build seawalls, to build better foundations, to lift buildings, to do things that will minimize loss in the future, loss of life and property, which means there's a lot of money to be made in putting people to work, building greater resilience against rising water. I'll give you another example. There are somewhere between 3 and 5 million American students who will get a homework assignment next week that requires them to get on the internet, and they can't do it to save their lives because they don't have access. Those kids are going to be at a disadvantage. That's morally wrong, and it's because we have not provided uniform, affordable access to rapid broadband, and Hillary wants to do that in her infrastructure program. And I'll give you just one more. I'll give you one more. We all saw what happened in Flint, Michigan, but Flint, Michigan is nowhere near the only place in America where children, without regard to race, have elevated lead levels in their blood because of drinking water from old rusty pipes. Now, if you tore up all those pipes and laid down new clean ones, our kids would have a healthy future, and every single job and everything I just talked about would, by definition, be an American job paying above the average wage in America. Now, there's more. There's more. 2/3 of our new jobs come from small business. The whole time I was president, we never were out of the top 5 countries in the world in new business formation. We're not in the top 10 anymore for a number of reasons. Hillary's laid out a $25 billion plan that accrues aggressive efforts to get people to start their own business in distressed areas and among traditionally underrepresented women and minorities in the small business community, and changes in the incentives to banks to make these kind of community loans. This is a very big deal. I strongly support the Dodd-Frank law, which the president signed, that keeps Wall Street from wrecking Main Street again. I strongly support that. But it's true that a lot of banks, just to be on the safe side and not to take any heat from anybody, are requiring the same sort of paperwork and collateral to make small business loans that bigger people have to provide. Now, in Florida, you know, you got a lot of big, expensive property developments. Think of this. If you're, let's say, 27 years old and you've always dreamed of opening your own bakery, and all you need is an $80,000 loan to do it, and it costs the bank as much money to do the background checks and all the requirements for your $80,000 loan as it would to make an $80 million loan to a property developer, what's going to happen? Won't be as many $80,000 loans. We've got to change that. She is the only person in this race you can vote for who's actually talked about in practical ways how to get more small business jobs. I'll give you another example. And you better think about this when you vote on this referendum in Florida. Except for Florida and a few other states east of the Mississippi and then west of the Mississippi, except for Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, and California. By and large, even though America ranks first or second in the world in the ability to generate electricity from the wind and the sun, by and large, the sun shines most and the wind blows hardest where the people do not live. Like the wind blows hardest between the North Dakota border with Canada and the West Texas border with Mexico. So if you want to make maximum use of this power source, we have to modernize our electrical grid so you can take the power from where it can be most efficiently generated to where it can be most efficiently used. That also requires infrastructure, investing in new battery technology and building new interconnections that are efficient so you don't lose a lot of the juice sending it from point A to point B. All those jobs would be in America. And we can do that. And you know, you can't imagine what it would be like if Florida had batteries that would store solar power for, let's say, maximum 4 days, and then you maximize your production, within a few years, electricity would be virtually free. And then what would happen? Wait, what would happen? Except for, replacing the panels and maintaining them and all that kind of stuff. What would happen is there would be a flood of manufacturing jobs come back to America. Because manufacturing is very efficient, which means every year, same number of people can produce more stuff, which means labor goes down and you can pay workers more. But wait, that's it. And what matters is transportation costs, materials costs, and energy costs. Well, we got the biggest market in the world. You could save all the transportation costs. If you got the energy down, then we'll be able to make competitively anything in the world. And the reason that's important is there'll never be as many manufacturing jobs as a percentage of the workforce as there was in 1950. It's too productive. But every manufacturing job creates another 2.5 jobs. This is a big deal. She's the only person you can vote for that's actually got a plan to do something to make America the manufacturing capital of the world again and everything. So, now, I can give you lots of other examples, but you get the drift. There's lots of stuff we can do that's affordable, achievable, straightforward, will create more jobs and raise incomes. Second thing we got to do is make sure everybody can access those jobs, which means first you got to make sure every child has the chance, starting with affordable preschool for everybody, to have a good education no matter what zip code they live in. And that sounds good, but the way you do it, I believe, is to test a little less and spend a little more money making teachers better teachers, principals better principals, and bringing people in the room. And look, I once was demonstrated against all over the country because I favored basic testing to measure things. But I don't think you need to give a national test every year for 5 years in a row to keep people in grade school. But I do believe that this new bill that the president signed is much more in keeping with the No Child Left Behind theory than the old bill was. But all I'm saying is we only give 7% of the money that in the school budget from the federal government. Hillary wants to modify it some so that we invest more in improving the quality of teaching, improving the quality of principals, and involving families in the schools so we can lift performance and there'll be less difference from district to district based on income. And I think that's important. Now, finally, maybe most important of all is everybody's got to go beyond high school to get a good middle-class job. But Hillary believes you don't all have to have a 4-year college degree, so she wants to re-dignify skills training in America and reward companies that share profits with their employees, train their workers, provide internships. She wants to she and Bernie Sanders did the most important thing that happened at the Democratic convention that didn't get much notice. They agreed to merge their two college plans. So the new plan looks like this. Everybody gets free community college. Everybody, tuition. Every family with an income of $125,000 a year or less, which is 85% of us, gets free tuition at any state institution for 4 years. Everybody else just above that can graduate debt-free because of work study and other financial investments. So going forward, if the Congress will pass her plan, this burden of college debt will be lifted from our young people. Now, the problem is 20 million young Americans have an average college debt of $30,000, and a lot of people owe $50,000 to $200,000, right? So here's what she wants to do about that. She wants to change the current law, which inexplicably makes a college loan the only loan you cannot refinance at lower interest rates. That doesn't make any sense. A woman I've been doing business with for more than 10 years in a little town in New York where we live sold me a pair of jeans a few months ago, and I said, how's your boy doing? Because I knew he was graduating from one of our state schools. She's always doing great. He made good grades. He's going to do fine. I said, you got any debt? She said, yeah, quite a bit. I said, what's the interest rate? She said, 9%. All right. Then I asked her, well, do you still have a home mortgage? She said, sure I do. I said, did you refinance it? She said, I did. I said, what's your interest rate? Less than 4%. There's something wrong when our country charges a young person starting out in life trying to make his or her own way more than twice the interest on an education loan that their parents pay on a home loan. That isn't right. So, especially since, I want all the young people here to listen to this. If you're 25 or younger, you got way over a 50% chance of living to be 100, and of living to be 100 without the threat of Alzheimer's or other dementia because of advances in the human genome. Which means that if you get a college education, it's more of a lifetime asset than your home will be. And we got a big stake in this. So what Hillary wants to do is, one, let everybody refinance. That means the average person with the average debt being about $30,000 would save more than $2,000 in interest payment. But people that owe a whopping amount would save a lot more than that. Then she wants to give everybody the option to pay that loan off over a period of years at an interest rate or at an amount, monthly payment rate, never, no matter how much you borrow, never more than 10% of your after-tax income. Now think what this would mean. People could move out of their parents' house. People could actually live and have disposable income. And under her plan, you only have to pay for 10 years, and then the rest is forgiven if you have a public service job. And no matter what job you have, after 20 years, if it's not paid off, you still don't owe anything else. Meanwhile, if you qualify for a small business loan, which you can now do, your payments will be suspended for 3 years while you try to get your business up and going. Think what this would do for the American economy. All of us, we would all be better off. If you're 85 and worried about Social Security and Medicare, you ought to be for this, because those kids will be paying into Social Security and Medicare and stabilizing this for everybody because they can go out and make a living. This is something we should all be for. So, there are lots of other things I could say that will give us a more inclusive economy, but this is important. Then you got to have a more inclusive society, which means we need police reform, but we need the police. Hillary met with some chiefs of police recently, people that really work hard to serve their community and where they've got good police-community relations. And they said, look, we all support body cameras. We all support extra training. We all support accountability. But we also know that one reason we have more likelihood of the wrong reaction today is that we have allowed our country to develop without a comprehensive mental health system. What we really need is a mental health system. Police chiefs, give us a place where people who honestly need help can go without shame. Don't stigmatize them. Empower them to live a different life by giving them mental health. They said they supported the end of mass incarceration for young nonviolent offenders. Let them out, but let them out with education and training and a guarantee that no one can deny them a job because they've once been incarcerated. In other words, I met an African-American minister in Chicago the other day, several months ago, after they just had a shooting of a young African-American man. And he said, you know, I did something last time this happened that a lot of my parishioners wondered about. The minute it happened, I went and volunteered to be a chaplain for the police department. because we got a lot of crime in this neighborhood. We need the police, but we can only have them if we trust each other. And I am determined, and every 5 weeks on Sunday afternoon, everybody in the community is invited to come with the leaders of the local police in the area and say whatever they want, talk about whatever they want, work out whatever they want. He said, you know, it's amazing. We don't have problems here anymore because we trust each other now. We know each other. We believe in each other. And my kids aren't scared when they walk outside at night. That's what we got to do. We got to do that in America again. But that requires cooperation, not conflict. It requires building trust. And that's why we should expand voting rights, not restrict them. Florida's been through that. It's why women's rights and labor rights and LGBT rights and all these rights, these things are important because they enable us to live on an equal footing and share the future. That's why, and I want to say one other thing. I was never more proud of Hillary than when she was the first person in either party to propose a major initiative to lower business taxes if people would invest more money in distressed areas, including coal country, Indian country, small town and rural America, and urban areas that have been without jobs for a long time. And, you know, she made me go. I went down to West Virginia to talk about this because she said, there's no way we can carry it now, is there? I said, no way. I said, you know, first of all, they only watch Fox News. And I said, but to be fair, they think we only care about our political base and the people that agree with us culturally. And it's not true, but that's what they think. And she said, I want you to go anyway, because I won West Virginia twice and Kentucky twice. So I went down there, and all these guys were like that, you know, and they had their Trump signs on. They were raising Cain and everything. And I said, guys, you did great when I was president. Come inside and scream at me. True story. And I brought them in. And I said, Hillary sent me down here to tell you that if you really believe that you can make America great again, knowing what I know it means as a white Southerner, what it means is I'll give you the economy you had 15 years ago and the society you had. In other words, I'll move you up on the social totem pole and others down. I said, first, I'm 70, so saying I'll give you the economy you had 50 years ago is like me saying I'd like to be 20 again. I would, actually. But I wouldn't vote for anybody that promised to make me 20 again. I mean, that's the first thing. You got to make a new economy. That's what America's about. We're always making new greatness. And we're always doing it by increasing opportunity and widening the circle of people who can seize it. And secondly, I said, Hillary doesn't want to move you up on the totem pole, and she doesn't want anybody to be above you. She wants to tear the totem pole down so we can go into the future together and all rise together. And so I told him, I said, so she asked me to come down here and say, you go on, vote for whoever you want to, but if she wins this race, she's coming back for you because she wants you to go into the future with the rest of us. People need to feel valued, and that's what I want to ask you, all of you. Don't engage in our version of all this screaming. Go out there and look people in the eye who aren't going to vote for her and tell them we still want them to be part of America. Tell them we need them. You know, look, man, the other guy's base is what I grew up in. You know, I'm basically your standard redneck. I was the first person who ever went to college in my family. I had a grandfather, as I told you, who was a saint. And he and my grandmother fought all the time. The only thing they agreed on was education and civil rights. He had a 6th grade education. She had a correspondence degree in nursing. They knew we were all the same. So I deserve no credit for what I tried to do. I was just raised that way. But I know how they feel. And I'm telling you, the older you get, the worse it is if you look in the mirror every day and you think you can't do anything to change the future. And a lot of you have felt, we've all had days like that, haven't we? Days we can live with, months we can live with. Years, a decade, that's a tough sell. I just spoke in Israel at the funeral of Shimon Peres, who died at 93. We were very close for a long time. He's a great hero of the peace efforts when I was president. And I got there the night before so I could go to the viewing and just support it, family. And I turned on the television, and they were running an interview he did with Charlie Rose not long before he died. So the guy's already well over 90, right? Charlie Rose says, this guy was in the parliament of Israel 48 years. He helped to found the Israeli Defense Force. He was a major force for peace. He was prime minister twice, foreign minister twice, and the president of Israel for 7 years. And they said, what do you want your legacy to be? You know what he said? I prefer to think more about tomorrow than yesterday. That's the way you want to be when you're not over 90. That's the way you want to be when you're over 90, when you care more about the future. So that's what I want to tell you. This is about the future. Hillary ought to be president because she got the right ideas. Hillary ought to be president because she's the best change maker I've ever known. And there's two things that could threaten our rising. One is continued political gridlock in Washington. The other is slow economic growth and turmoil around the world, which could hold us all back. She has the best ideas, and she is the only person you can vote for who has ever and who has always gotten everything she did that was important to get enough Republican support to pass the Congress, whether it was a Democratic or a Republican Congress, whether it was a children's health insurance program or aid to New York after 9/11, or a nuclear arms deal with Russia, which we need now with all the tension, or the sanctions on Iran, always. And that's even more true now because of all the internal fighting you've got over there with their nominee and the Speaker of the House and all that, you know. She just never closes the door. And that's important. The founding fathers gave us a constitution which might as well have been subtitled, Let's Make a Deal. They made it impossible for the president to impose his or her will on everybody else in America. Even Franklin Roosevelt, with all the support he had in the Depression and World War II, couldn't change the size of the Supreme Court, for example. You've got to have somebody who can do something with somebody else. Every important thing she ever did, she did that. Secondly, you've got to have somebody with a standing and the understanding of the world to keep big bad things from happening and give us the space we need and the security we need to grow and lead the rest of the world away from it. Which is why I'm very proud of the fact that Hillary has always been profoundly outspoken about how we cannot prevent terrorist acts on American soil inspired by ISIS and other radicals unless we have the cooperation of hardworking, law-abiding American Muslims who love the United States, love freedom, and hate terror. And look, I've been staggered by the number of Muslims who've come to our meetings who told me, you know, they'd always been Republicans because they were small business people, and that's what they thought they were supposed to be until they realized they weren't welcome in America anymore. And they said, you know, we think what these people are doing is a perversion of our religion, not an expression of it. We're willing to stand against it. We want to help. That's why people were so upset by what happened to Captain Khan's family. That man died serving us. And that's important. A very close friend of mine had a stroke last night. And he lives in Arkansas. So I got a call saying, well, he's going to survive. And, you know, it's too soon to say how much he'll recover from. But he said his life was saved by two brothers doctors, brilliant doctors, who came to the United States from Iran, which means they were either Shia Muslims or Farsi. It could have been Baha'i, I don't know. But you get it, don't you? America's an idea. It's an idea. It's the same idea my granddaddy had when Luther Black walked in his store. I don't care what color this guy is. He's got a family to feed. He's working all day, every day. He never broke a law in his life. He's entitled to feed his kids if he's working and doing the best he can. We're either going to live by that idea or we're not. And I'm just telling you, I have spent... Now, I'm going on at some length for a reason. There's the reason that a lot of these xenophobic dividers are winning elections all over the world, or is it the people that are full of road rage are more likely to vote than the people that know better? The president of Colombia just won the Nobel Peace Prize. I don't know if any of you follow that, but he's a friend of mine, and I worked for years to support the Colombian peace process. We spent a lot of your money in the last couple of years I was president to help the Colombians get their country back, because these FARC rebels and the narco traffickers they were fronting for controlled 30% of Colombia in the late 90s. 30%. We'd go crazy if any foreign power controlled 30% of any American state, wouldn't we? Okay, so they did. And now the country, by and large, belongs to the people again. They've weakened the armed opposition. They're still growing coca in the deep rainforest. You don't want them to eradicate the whole rainforest. That would be a disaster. But the point is they made progress. So they had this deal. I never read the deal. You know, I don't have an opinion about that, but I know this. It failed by less than 1% in a referendum. And yet every single poll showed by 7 to 10% it would pass. What does that tell you? The againers voted, and the ones that were for it are kicking themselves. In the Brexit vote in the United Kingdom, massive evidence that people wanted to stay, a majority, but they stayed home, some of them, while the ones that wanted to go showed up. And I give you lots of other examples. Don't be somebody that didn't show up. I want you to think about this. If you're for Hillary on election day, or if you want to vote earlier by mail, if you don't vote, you are giving a half a vote to the other side. If you vote for one of the other candidates because you said, I wish it hadn't been so negative, you're giving half a vote to the other side. This is a big deal. This is your future. And I was really proud of her in that debate. And but I've been proud of her for a long time. Before she was 30 years old, before she was 30, she had worked on getting African-American teenagers out of adult prisons in South Carolina. She had registered historically unregistered and politically isolated Mexican Americans in South Texas. She had gone to Alabama, where there were these private academies developing that were basically segregated schools by another name, illegally claiming federal tax exemptions to prove they weren't eligible. And she went to Massachusetts to find out why in the wide world the census said there were so many more children than were enrolled in school. And she walked up on the porch and found a young boy sitting in a wheelchair who had never been enrolled in public school because we just passed this Individuals with Disabilities Act, and we were only then learning that people have abilities, not just disabilities. We've all got disabilities, and we need to focus on the abilities people have. She was doing that more than 40 years ago. And she'll make you proud. But I'm telling you, I've been doing this half my life. Everything I've ever learned tells me that we're just this close to being able to all rise together again. But you got to have good ideas, good leadership, break the political gridlock, and keep us safe and give us the space we need to grow. She's the best change maker I've ever known. But we have to choose to cooperate, concentrate, and create opportunity. We have to choose answers over anger. We have to choose empowerment over resentment. We have to choose cooperation over conflict. And yes, even when sometimes it's tough, we got to choose bridges over walls. We got a great future, America. Go claim it. Thank you.